Welcome to Nitpicking Nerds, and it's time to get controversial.
We're defending our most controversial opinions. Again.
I'm your host, Joe Cherries.
I'm your host, Beezy, and that makes us the Nitpicking Nerds. And I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life because we're never going to stop making daily videos. And if you want to support said videos, you could be like patron Ezekiel Shackelford and join us in the description below.
Yes, we love our patrons as much as we can without making them uncomfortable. We want to let you know about a little event the Nitpicking Nerds will be attending, and I know some other content creators will be there. So if you want to meet us and some other content creators, you can attend the Commander Sealed Event 2022. It is September 17th at noon in Rochester, New York.
Wow, how about it? There's going to be, I don't want to list off names because I'm not going to get them all right, but I know there's at least like 20 people that have names in the community that are going to be there. It's like $170 entry because you're getting 19 packs of Commander packs, and you're going to basically build a Commander deck out of a sealed pool, a gigantic sealed pool, and it's just going to be all over the place, super fun, and it's all for charity.
It is all for charity. That's one of the most important parts of this event. Not only is it a fun, unique experience, it is also going to benefit the Trevor Project, an extremely awesome charity.
Small flex. This is going to be our second time. This is also the third time they've ever done it. And our friend Eric Nowicki won last time.
He did.
Well, the whole thing. Because he watches our videos.
In this channel, as always, it's sponsored by moxfield.com. When is the ad going to be in the video? You have no clue. I have no clue. So when you guess in the description with a time code, you'll probably be wrong.
Yes, it would definitely be in a video called Our Least Controversial Opinions because it's so amazing. And we got some things to hammer out before we get into our most controversial opinion.
We also have to say happy birthday to everybody whose birthday is today.
That was the first one. Now what's the rest of them?
First thing we got to do, what power level are we talking about? We're talking about a power level, let's just say somewhere around a 6 to 8. Combat matters. That's what we're talking about right now.
We don't really play fast mana, and we don't really play infinite combos anymore.
Yes, and we're going to talk about if something is relative to combos, we'll talk about combos. If something's not relative to combos, we won't talk about combos. But in this case, we're just talking about a slower combat-based meta. That's what we're going to be talking about for this video.
No, that's what we talk about all the time. That's just a refresher. That's always what we're talking about, from 4 months ago to the foreseeable future, which means by process of elimination that we are not talking about budget builds, which have an entirely different evaluation standard and philosophy, and CEDH, which is not a format we play.
It's also a completely different building in philosophy. It's literally both budget and CEDH are, you can think of them as just different building styles.
You can't talk about all three at the same time.
You can't. It's impossible to do that. We are also, as we always say, not an authority on this game. Our opinions are our opinions. We tend to agree on things a lot, and you might even disagree. And that's perfectly fine. That's actually going to be something we're going over in 1 second. We change our opinions all the time. Actually, something that we were going to put on this list, and it'll probably be in a future video because I've changed my opinion on it, is Ghostly Prison being bad in certain metas. We'll talk about that again in the future, but it's something I've changed my opinion on because I was presented with new information. And as I received new information, I changed my opinion to fit my new worldview.
Right, but as we go and make videos and stuff, there'll be things that we kind of touch on that we think, and then people will get really hung up on it. Not really hung up, but they'll get they'll defend something and they'll be like, I don't know why you said this. And we can't really go back and explain it because we keep changing topics. We make new videos every day, especially in shorts. So this is a good opportunity to sort of collect some of the more controversial things we say and at least justify why we think it. We don't have to it's not an objective, we're not about to prove these things, but we're going to give reasons why because I think some people are confused.
Again, yeah, we're not objectively correct. Everything we're about to say is going to be opinions. It's not going to be objectively correct, except for this first one, which actually is pretty much objectively correct.
Hard to disagree on this one.
It is hard to disagree. It's okay to disagree because this is we're talking about Commander, a format that is not solvable. It's extremely complex, and one of the main factors in it is fun. And because fun is such a big factor in it, it changes everything. It makes it so you can't just solve the format. Sure, you could talk about CDH and say it's kind of solvable. In a way, yeah, it is. It's really complex and hard to solve. Yeah, but if we put all the best minds in Magic on CEDH, it would become a solved format. I do believe so.
It's a problem of you can maybe figure out what deck to bring, but you can't solve how to play it. 4 players is too many players to make objective statements about things. And then when you get into the nitty gritty of is this card better than this card? It's you don't know. You can make your best guess, but you don't actually know. So I think Commander has very few, if any, objective truths outside of the rules and stuff. Disagreeing on anything is actually okay for the most part, unless you're violating some kind of morality or like personal freedom somehow, but disagreeing generally, especially with Magic the Gathering trading cards, ages 13 and up, is okay. Disliking a Magic the Gathering trading card is not the same as disliking a person. I think this is where a lot of the negativity, especially in shorts, where people who comment, they don't really know us or our videos, comes into play. Like, we're really not attacking you when I just say that I think, like, Grave Titan isn't that good. It really has nothing to do with you at all. I'm really just talking about the cardboard.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a big thing is when you talk in person, it's so much easier to have these conversations. I've talked about people, like sometimes people play a card and I'll be like, hey, let's have it. And I'll be like, hey, usually in my videos I talk about, usually it's as if they know who I am. I don't just try and plug my YouTube channel.
It's more of a joke, yeah.
It's like, I talk about X card, and I don't think it's very good, but you have it in your deck, and like we do it back and forth. And I always think that's interesting and fun to do. And it's so easy to have those conversations in person. Then we end up, usually, I'm not trying to change their mind. I'm just presenting my side of it. And we just end up disagreeing at the end most of the time, and it's fine. But on the internet, what happens is everyone goes to the comment section and calls us idiots.
Well, they just get really defensive. It's the problem of, like, I think it's one of the most toxic things the Magic community does, and we definitely need to work on this as a whole here, because it's kind of like this internet anonymity plus defensive stance because they feel threatened or something, where it's like, I'm not saying anything about you. Even if I say Grave Titan is garbage, doesn't mean the people who play it are stupid or they're misinformed, because Commander, we can't reiterate this every time, but Commander, the bedrock of the entire format is play what you want, have fun. And when I'm talking about, like, hey, powering up our decks, I'd recommend X, Y, Z. I can't just say that every single time. It's weird. I feel like it's lost in communication sometimes. But it really is. It's like an assumption A, we're having fun. You can play whatever you want, but if you're here for recommendations, I got some.
Yeah, when I say a card is bad, all I mean is the card is bad. I don't mean, I say nothing. The statement, this card is bad, says nothing about the players who play the card whatsoever.
And if you think that there's a problem with Joe saying a card is bad, then you can say, well, I don't think this card's bad. I think it does X, Y, and Z, and like I think that's really cool, and I play it all the time, and it's great for me. But like, I don't understand how you get from Joe says a card is bad to Joe must be lying or severely misinformed or stupid or whatever. It's like, that's just dumb. I mean, I think I'm just going to start shadow banning people for that. We don't have any space in our community for negativity.
Same thing. People really love to call us out for clickbaiting. Like, hey, they put this in here only to get views. Like, no, we've literally never done that. Any card that we've ever put in one of our videos where we say avoid X card, avoid Y card, we genuinely believe that they are avoidable in most cases. And for every one of those cards, there's exceptions. I mean, there's never a card we're going to say you should never, ever play.
Yeah, that's another problem is everyone likes to bring up the 1%. We can't ever talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when I say something that's not in this video but was a controversial opinion, Dramatic Reversal is a bad card outside of comboing, and you bring up an Urza deck. It's like, yeah, that is a case where, but I still think it's a bad card. It's like, it is good in that one specific deck. But overall, it's a pretty awful card.
I think that's a whole other topic of what makes a card actually good. Because you can say there's a combo with bad cards in it, but the combo's good. It's the whole thing. But yeah, if we don't think a card that you like is good, that doesn't mean we're stupid or lying, and it doesn't mean the card is objectively bad.
And we're not clickbaiting.
We're not trying to tell you to not play it. At best, we're recommending it. We're not saying you have to stop or you're doing anything wrong.
Yeah, I'm very adamant about that. When people ask for my opinion on decks, they'll send it to me. I'll be like, I would cut X, Y, Z. And then sometimes they'll like give a defense for like Z. Like they'll be like,
you don't have to do that.
They're like, Z's been good in this situation. It's really, I'm like, well, if you like it and it's performing for you, you should keep playing it. This is my suggestion. This is what I would cut from what I know about Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, so that's very meaty topic 1. Let's work on it.
All right, I love this next one.
Yeah, now I can get into the juice.
It is a juice because I honestly believe this, and people really think that this card are defending this card, and that's okay. You're allowed to like it, as we said, when we can disagree.
Yeah, here it comes.
Sheoldred is bad in Commander, and we're talking about a 6 and up, probably closer to a 7. Let's round to a 7 for this. I don't think Sheoldred belongs in many decks. It's just not a card I think is very good. So let's just start with her mana value. She is 7 mana. Now, one of the main things that starts coming up after that is like, well, no one's casting her. It's like, okay, let's just say we're never casting her 7 drops, which isn't true. If you're playing a 7 drop in a deck, you're casting your 7 drops.
Yeah, you really just can't write off the mana cost of a spell just because you want to reanimate it. And there's problems with that, but please continue.
Yeah, exactly. So it's in a highly contested spot. I didn't list cards here because we actually did one a while back where we listed a bunch of cards that like replace Grave Titan spot. It's the same list. And then it's like, so now the argument becomes like, all right, you're not casting her. That's not the goal of Sheoldred. You play her as a reanimation target. I just think she's a bad reanimation target overall. So just here's some targets I just think in general perform better for me. Villas, Massacre Worm, Worm Coil Engine, Runescar Demon, Sepulchral Primordial, Machias, Kakusho, Ithapiches, Archon of Cruelty, Ancient Brass Dragon.
Throw in
Razaketh. That's 10. That's 10 like quick. That's actually 11 then. 11 quick ones. And now each one of these cards is not individually better or worse than Sheoldred overall, but these are all targets that I have had more success with reanimating. That's 10 just in black. So if we're only in a mono black deck, I have 10 targets I think are better reanimation targets. I play Sheoldred. I play it in my Umezawa deck, my Tetsuo Umezawa deck. And Satoru. Why can't I remember his first name? I don't know why. But I played in that deck, and I cheated into play on turn 4. It has won me games because it's not been answered. I just don't think it's very good. There's just better choices. There's better options out there than Sheoldred.
I'll give you the rundown. So it's 7 mana with an asterisk. We'll touch on it later. You can only address 1 point at a time. So it's 7 mana for the 6/6 with Swamp Walk. As far as I'm concerned, the 6/6 with Swamp Walk is not any reason to play this card at all. It's just kind of like a bonus that you get that it happens to be able to attack a few times. So you're going to get like, if you wait an entire turn around the table with this card that is kind of a threat, people want to answer it. It's not, I don't think it's that great, but so you're going to get basically 3 sacrifices over a long period of time, and then you're going to get a reanimate. It's like Fleshbag Marauder plus reanimate, kind of, except you don't have to sacrifice. But like now when we're talking about mana value, that's like 5 mana value, and we're in a whole turn. So we've had to spend the 7 mana. If it dies right away, you get nothing. If it dies after 3 people have sacrificed a creature, you really don't get your mana's worth. It's hard to get your mana value back. You also have to have a creature worth reanimating in your graveyard. So it like requires setup past the point of even casting it and doing all the things. And oh boy, this thing is slow. I think, and I think you'll think also, that Fleshbag Marauder and Playcrafter just on average perform better than this card. I can only say what I've tested and seen, but every single time I've ever seen it, I think the caster and me would rather just had the 3 mana version.
Yeah, a lot of the time that's true. And yeah, so my experience is that never are both sides of the card relevant. By that I mean the sacrifice is either not relevant or the opposite side of the coin is true and the reanimation's not. When you put this thing out early, you usually don't have other targets to reanimate. So you cheated into play or you reanimated from your graveyard. It was probably one of the only big threats in your graveyard. I mean, if you obviously there is going to be times when you go like living Buried Alive, and Buried Alive can set you up for some certain things. Maybe specifically with Buried Alive, and you have ways to make sure you untap. It's fine, but regardless of any of that, I don't see both being online because early game the sack matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you cheat into play, the sack matters because they have less creatures.
Mm-hmm.
Later in the game, the reanimation matters, but you have to go all the way around, and the sack's not going to matter because people have developed their boards and usually have disposable creatures that are easy to sacrifice and worth sacrificing.
Right, and the weird thing for me is when you start saying, because we've heard it a lot, I don't know why, but it's like, this isn't a 7 mana spell. We're just reanimating it on turn 2 or 3. A couple problems. The first one is, what does a turn 2 Sheoldred actually get you? What did you do on turn 1? You like entombed it, and then on turn 2 you reanimated it, but also everybody else has 1 creature in play, and also you have another good creature in your graveyard to get back somehow. I don't know where this is coming from. It's like, to me it just seems like the earlier you reanimate it, like turn 1, it doesn't do anything. It's just a 6/6 because they're just going to attack people. They're not going to necessarily play a creature. They're going to play Mana Rocks or whatever. I don't get that. But the other thing is, when you say, I can even take this argument at face value. It's like when you say, well, this isn't a 7-drop, this is a 1-drop because I'm going to cast Reanimate on it and lose life and reanimate it on turn whatever. Okay, but then we, to be fair, we have to put all these cards on the same exact footing. So now every reanimation target is 1 mana with Reanimate, and we listed like 11 better ones that I'd rather have almost every time.
That's only mono black.
Only a mono black, and it's just so weird that like, are you not playing those 11 in terms of like, we're just talking about power?
Yeah,
I would be. I don't know. You can't just give Sheoldred a free pass and then all these other cards cost 11.
Also, the cards I listed were all sorts of power levels. Like a Runescar Demon is not on the same power level as Machias, obviously.
Or it might not even be the same power level as Sheoldred, but there's some absolute bangers. Like any Eldrazi monster, any Kakusho, I think, Machias, Villas, and Razaketh are completely brutal.
Yeah, my list here was just like, hey, here are cards that I think I'd rather reanimate overall. One of the biggest targets I've seen is Worm Coil Engine. That's in the type of games that we play now, combat matters. Worm Coil Engine is a house.
It's been better. Certainly better than when combos were possible.
Yeah, Worm Coil Engine has been so good. It's been the card that you can just spam and it can win you games by itself.
That's certainly true. So yeah, Sheoldred, we've spent so much time, but we think it's slow. We don't think it's worth waiting all this time. If you're talking about the value of Sheoldred is reanimate a bigger threat, just reanimate the other thing, and you can just cut out the whole middleman and wait no time at all and not have to play a 7-drop. I just, we don't see it. I would love to talk about it civilly in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, we're completely open to saying and like disagreeing again, like we said before. We're completely open to disagreeing, being on the opposite side, and having a discussion about it because this is a completely open topic.
The world does not end when we disagree.
I really do think Shieldred's a bad card. That being said, I played in Commander because I don't just play Commander. I don't just play good cards. I don't just play to have the best deck. So Sheoldred's
cool.
She's one of my favorite characters. She's the coolest. I think she might be the coolest looking Praetor.
Oh, get out of here.
That's
blasphemy.
She's so scary.
She might be the least coolest one.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not.
She's like
I'm not. They're all cool.
Oh, she's so gross looking.
You know what's not gross looking and not even controversial is Moxfield.com. You can go to this website to build Commander decks or any other decks. It just, the sheer efficiency of the tools, the tags, the pricing, the sorting, the playtesting, just outclasses any other website you could even go to. Even non-Magic deck building websites. Even Google.
It's not even remotely close. This is the best deck building website on the entire internet. Moxfield.com is literally what we use for all of our decks. There are tons of awesome creators on there. Big, like, Nitpicking Nerds, the biggest creators on there. Most followers, some of the most views, whatever. We're not bragging, but we're bragging. And also, you could check out like Dadbot. Dadbot makes $1 decks.
Oh yeah.
So if you want to check out Dadbot's $1 decks, which I don't even know how he manages to do that. But he does.
He does.
So check out Dadbot's decks too.
A lot of CDH on there. Dylan to Win, Sinestra does stuff. I think
Cam Jam.
Shaper is one on there. There's a lot of CDH builders.
Yeah, Cam Jam, other guy from, the other guy.
Well, Dylan is the profile name. So that's, I don't know if Cam is like.
No, Cam also on there.
Oh, Cam, you got to get those followers up. Dylan's putting you to shame.
All right, let's get right back to this video.
This one's great. Sheoldred had so many people defending it. It's almost like has more defenders than Grave Titan. I don't know. It's hard to say. Grave Titan has a lot of defenders.
There was hundreds of comments about Sheoldred.
We've mentioned her a couple times, and throughout that, there's definitely hundreds of comments. But this next one is like a brand new one that I didn't even know people liked. It's Varragoth, Bloodsky Sire. Maybe even warrants a read on this one. It's 2 and a black for 2/3. It's got Boast for 1 and a black, so as long as it attacked this turn, you can pay that mana to go search for a card, any card, and put it on top of your library, and then, finish combat because he's probably attacking. And then the next turn, you're going to draw it. So for me, what I look at when I see this card is a not so budget. It's like $2.50 tutor, but you have to play him, and then you wait an entire turn to untap with him, and you haven't gotten anything yet. You just have a 2/3 with Death Touch. Then you attack with him. Okay, he may or may not survive combat. Who's to say? But you do get to pay 2 more mana, so now you're at 5 total to go search for a card. But the card goes on top, so now you have to wait an entire other turn or draw a card somehow, spend mana to then get the card into your hand, and now you've gotten a tutor, and you may or may not have Varragoth left in play. To me, that's just like my eyes glaze over at the amount of work I have to do to just get a tutor.
Yeah, it's way too much mana for the early game, right? Like, so let's just say that you turn 3 you play this, and you played a turn 2 Signet, so you have like a little more mana. All right, you play him down. It's taking up most of your turn. You have 2 mana left after that.
May or may not cast a spell.
Yeah, and then
not.
next turn you attack and you use 2 mana. Now you have 4 left over. It stops you from casting your bigger drops that you kind of ramped into, right? It's slowing the game down. And it's the thing about these tutors, and I don't want to speak for Imperial Seal specifically because that's 1 mana, that's a sorcery, that is a way different card. The thing about this sorcery speed tutor on your turn is if you don't have a way to draw a card, which often you won't, sometimes you will. Don't get me wrong, you'll sometimes just be able to put it in your hand. You're setting up your draw to be your best draw on the current board state based on everything you know.
Right.
Then you go a whole turn around the table and things change. A lot of things change because people play board rights, removal. They set up their board states differently and you have to answer different threats. You might not even have the best card on top by the time it comes back to your turn. That being said, obviously tutoring is strong. It is a powerful effect. I just think when you end up paying 5 mana for a tutor to put it on top,
you have to wait 2 turns for this card.
You have to wait 2 turns to get that card. You can kind of cut out, like if you have some card draw, you can cut it down to 1 less turn. But even then, it's not card advantage. It's just neutral.
I don't know. It's very, very weird to me. This card just strikes me as like the most mediocre, like possibly playable, like Demons Tribal, Rogues Tribal, like Alicia. I get that there's places this card does things, but in terms of like on average, which is how you have to talk about every card, because I cannot talk about all 1,500 commanders that exist. On average, this thing just looks like really mediocre. I mean, I don't know if anyone's clamoring to defend Profane Tutor, but when I look at Profane Tutor, I see a much better rate than this. I'm paying 2 mana, I wait the same amount of time, but the time when it pops off, I get the card right in my hand right now, and there's no chance of being irrelevant. I don't have to play a mediocre body and then like wait or have to risk it dying to something. It's just so weird to like put out. It's like playing a tutor with suspend 1, but anybody can discard a creature removal spell to just counter it.
Yeah, I think one of the big things about that Varragoth and Sheoldred hold in common is they don't impact the board immediately.
At all.
At all. Neither of them do anything until pretty much a whole go around the table. Like,
I think so.
You have to wait quite a long time for both these cards. And I think that is part of our deck building philosophy. We want all of our cards to impact the board almost right away.
Very Gen Z. I want my value now.
We want value quicker. And not to say that there are great cards that do not give you value right away. They do exist. But in general, it's a good rule to say if I want the value now or later, it's almost always now.
Right, and I know one of the people defending this card have said, it's like, well, this isn't one tutor, it's repeatable tutors. It's like, at that point, it feels like a little bit win more. How many turns do you need of a tutor? Usually I just need a tutor. Like, give me a tutor, I'll find the thing I need, and I'll take over the game or at least reset the board or something. I'm not looking for, if things go right for me 4 turns in a row, I get 2 tutors. Like, I'm not looking for that.
Yeah.
I just want tutor.
I agree. And like you said, it does. There are probably homes for this card. If you build a Demon Tribal deck, this is one of the best 3-drops in your deck, right?
For me, actually, this is a weird one because I feel like we almost have to be talking about budget for this card to even enter the conversation. Because if we're just talking about tutors, I mean, forget about it. There's like 17 better ones.
I was talking about like.
Well, I just mean for this card to be in the discussion. I feel like don't we have to be on a budget or something? People have mentioned it sees some CDH play, which is great that we mentioned that we don't care at the beginning. I mean, it's just like we can't evaluate that. I don't even know if it's true, but I'm not going to say Spell Pierce is good because it sees playing CDH.
Yeah, agreed. Same thing. This next one I don't think should be controversial, but somehow it's still controversial to some people. And that is the demand of a card should not be higher than the supply of a card, meaning there should not be more people who want to have a card than there are cards in existence.
Fortunately, that almost never comes up because Magic cards are printed in the millions, billions, I don't know, tens of millions. There's more Magic cards than anyone could ever need, except for a handful of Magic cards known as the reserve list, which just to me is like this big problematic zit on the format that's not going away or needs to be dealt with in some form, because I just think part of the core of Magic is that you have a list of game pieces, cards. They're here. Here's the master list. You can take them, you can play them. Anyone has access to all of them. It's a question of money, but they are there for you to physically access. But if we simplify all the numbers, because there's not enough, let's say, Underground Seas for the players who want to play Underground Sea, and I think that's a huge problem. But if you simplify it, there's 10 Underground Seas that exist, and there's 100 players who want to use Underground Sea. What do you tell 90 of them? And which ones get it? The first 10 to get there? Like, what do you tell the other 90 is like, too bad? Just proxy it? Just proxy it is not the answer.
And because of supply and demand and the way it works, let's just put this in a situation where everyone who wants to have Underground Sea can afford to buy it. Well, what will happen is that everyone who wants to try and buy one will buy it, but then the price will go up. And then the people who could afford it, like, because everyone couldn't get them at once because there wasn't actually enough of them, now they can't actually afford them. This is how supply and demand works. This is like economics 101. It's a very simple thing. If there's not enough for all the people and all the people want to buy it, it'll go up in price.
Right. For me, at least to us, one of our things that we're saying is like, this is such a big problem that we would consider banning the reserve list, where it's like you literally cannot play with the cards because there's not enough of them. And proxying isn't an answer. You can't force somebody to proxy a card instead of own it.
Yes, you can't force somebody. Or, I'm just going to look at it from a rules perspective. The two real solutions here are you, A, ban the reserve list, which is completely reasonable considering that supply does not meet demand for those cards, and it never can, and it never will unless something changes.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is you allow proxies you make it legal within the rules for proxying cards on the reserve list, and then that solves the problem as well. You don't need demand to be met by supply anymore. It no longer is necessary because you allow people to play proxies legally within the format.
See, for me, I don't even think that solves it. Like, if I say I don't want to play with a proxy, that's fair, and you can't really argue with that. But now I cannot play with Underground.
Well, you can't.
Like, I just can't.
You can't argue with that unless it's within the rules, right?
Well, no, I'm saying, like, I want to own Underground C. That's.
Oh, yeah. Well,
but you just can't, like.
You're allowed to have that feeling,
you have
too.
to tell this person, like, too bad. What a weird.
It does.
No game designer would ever allow that.
But here's what I'm saying. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree. Like, a lot of people like to own the cards, right? And have the actual physical cards. And that's fair. But that becomes more of a personal thing if the proxy is a legal card to play within the format. It's like
it might.
It's a personal preference at that point.
I think from a game design perspective, that's a broken part of your game.
It is.
Like, you just have to fix it. Or
so think about it this way. Say they created let's just use chess. In the beginning of chess, they decided they're only gonna make 10,000 rooks, and now there's way more than 10,000 chess players. But they say you can use anything to represent a rook, which would be a proxy of a rook. It's still fine. It's not a big deal at all, and it doesn't change the game if it's legal to play with it within the rules. That is a huge part of what I'm saying.
That feels more like a tournament thing than maybe like a collectible aspect of it. Anyway, it's super weird. I don't think this is a good thing at all. That we're in this position.
I think it's a horribly negative thing.
I would think that something would need to be done. Obviously, they don't have to do anything. Everybody could just do nothing. But I think eventually
they're not doing anything.
You're just going to get a problem.
Yeah, like currently they're not doing anything. We're in this position where, simply put, demand way outweighs supply for any reserve list card, or not any, but the most powerful and best reserve list cards. It's not close. Demand is outweighing supply, which is horrible. It's horrible for the game, and I would like to see something change for Commander specifically.
It's interesting to think about if this was true in a tournament setting. Like, what about 50 years from now? Like, there's just not going to be enough dual lands for people who want to play Legacy if that's still a thing.
It is true.
They would have to do something.
I was going to say it is true in a tournament setting. There are technically if they made Legacy a Pro Tour format, it would become problematic.
Yeah, they almost can't, right?
If you just they have in the past when the player base, but as the game grows and more people want to make the Pro Tour, it becomes more people's aspirations.
More people play.
Now you're just going to push the prices of these duels through the roof because supply or demand is going to be so high.
Yeah, I mean, pricing out of these cards isn't even that big of an issue for me because it's inevitable if you're not going to print more. But just to me, the fact that there does not exist enough to satiate the player base is just that's so not a Magic the Gathering problem that it's baffling. But I think we got this one out there. That's our controversy.
Considering cards are literally cardboard that can be printed at will.
You would think.
They all can. Even the reserve list technically can be printed at will by Wizards of the Coast. That doesn't mean they're going to do it.
Right.
But they do have the power to do it.
And I'm not saying that the rules committee has to ban reserve list
or
cards.
That they should.
Or that the Wizards has to print more reserve list cards. But our opinion that is controversial is this is a big problem.
So that some action should be taken in some way to address this problem.
Or at least that this is negative. This next one is a Cherries Soapbox Classic that I 100% support, so I'll let Cherries go off for a few minutes on it.
Yes, Rites of Flourishing is one of, if not the literal worst card in Commander power-wise. Now, I have to obviously caveat here. I am not talking about fun at all. We're not talking about changing the game with a fun thing, the group hug perspective, the little tiny synergies that you might have in your deck. I've seen it. I've heard it all. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about this card as a whole. So let's just start at its base.
Got to zoom out.
You got to zoom out. It does the same thing for every single player. It is a symmetrical effect that is positive for everyone, meaning you're giving everyone else positive impact on the game without them spending any resources. You spend 3 mana, you get this enchantment. You do get the land drop first at anyone, but the card draw, the more powerful half, some might even argue, is going to go to the other players first until it comes back around you, and then you will get a card draw. You're the very last person to benefit from this card, and by the time you benefit from it, everyone has benefited equally. A card that says each player draws 1 card is not a good Magic card, especially when you have to put mana into it. It is not good. Temple Bell, not a good Magic card. It's just, you spent the mana. The problem is now you've spent the mana to make everybody get equal amount of resources. You also spent a card to do it.
Yeah, and this is pretty big for when we're talking about, it's not just making everybody draw a card is bad. Okay, I get that you're about to say, what about wheels? It's wheels can be negative for them, and there's a lot of ways to make them very negative. But this, especially Rites of Flourishing, is basically only positive. And if it's somehow negative, like with a Nekusar or something, it's not negative enough to actually offset the positive at all. So I don't know what you'd have to do for like this specific card to make it super negative, but this really is talking about like these group hug cards, these group hug only cards. Like Wheel of Fortune is not necessarily a group hug card, but like Mana Flare and Rites of Flourishing, when you're not using them selfishly, they are going to decrease your win percentage. It's not like, oh, switch out any random card in your deck for Memnite. It's like, well, how much does Memnite increase your win percentage? Gee, not very often. But Rites of Flourishing is like tanking your win percentage.
And like I said, one of the biggest issues I have with this is, so if Rites of Flourishing appears in play, everybody gets the basically the same advantage. Obviously, the person whose turn it appeared on got the worst advantage because they get it last. But regardless of any of that, if it just appears in play, that's one thing. It doesn't. It's a card from your hand, from your deck, that you spent mana on.
What happens if it just appears and you start the game like that? Because when you start the game and you speed up the introduction of resources, if you just start with 3 Rites of Flourishings in play, the amount of win percentage for every deck is going to change drastically. The best deck is going to rise to the top of that and win way more games than any other deck, because let's say everybody's deck is about equal in power level, but one person just has like some kind of critical mass combo that they can eventually get to, but it doesn't mean that their deck's like CDH or their pub stopping. They're all about the same. This person is going to annihilate everybody. It's like if you played out 1,000 games, they're going to win like half of them, because introducing all these cards at once it doesn't help everybody equally, because everybody's decks cannot be equally powerful.
Or even one other thing, you change the game, which is basically what every card does, right? Every card kind of changes the game a little bit.
Especially enchantments,
which are like, static effects. You're changing the game. And it is a drastic change. If Magic the Gathering is draw 2 cards every turn, play 2 lands every turn, that's a different game. And certain decks will take advantage of that much better. Again, if it just appeared in the game, you could have the best deck to take advantage of that in the end. Like, your deck could be set up. But you spent resources to put that on the battlefield.
When it's one of 100 cards.
And it takes up a card slot in your deck. It's just not, literally, like, my favorite thing to say is, if you can put, if I put 100 mana 1/1 in my deck, it's almost never going to do anything. It's going to sit in my hand. It's going to rot. It's going to be an empty card. But my win percentage will go down because I have a dud in my deck. But when I draw Rites of Flourishing, my win percentage goes down because I spend mana, I spend resources to play this card, and then everyone else benefits just as much as me, if not more, because actually it'll almost always be more unless the game ends on your next one of your turns, because they all do it first. So if it ends on anyone else's turn, you gave away more than you got.
Yeah, this is a personal preference for us that we don't like Group Hug for power. I don't really have too much of an issue playing against it as long as I know beforehand. But Group Hug really changes the game fundamentally in a way that isn't as fun for me. It's still fun because it's Commander. It's the best thing ever. But it isn't as fun for me as just playing a game where everybody's goal is to like take their own resources and win the game with it. I don't want to say I see through it, but to me, it doesn't look at like this fun, wacky chaos thing. It just looks like I'm going to give everybody resources. Someone's going to be able to take advantage of them the best, and it's probably not me, the person who has to play against this.
Destroy them.
It's a little frustrating sometimes.
I destroy group hug cards, and people like seem confused when I do it. It's like, but everyone's getting something. It's like, yes, and that's bad.
That's not good.
Like I said, every player draws a card is not beneficial to me. That I do not want that. My each opponent gets a card and I get one card. I don't want that to happen.
It's funny because that's the other thing that usually happens with these cards is the person in the turn order is just going to go, all right, thanks for the boost. I didn't spend any mana on it, but I sure will take advantage of it. And I drew a Nature's Claim. Well, it's gone, but I got to take advantage. And now what happens to everybody else is you're just behind.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I don't. People really think that they should get favor for playing these cards.
Not for me.
It has been a very common thing where people think that they like, hey, where's my favor? Why are you destroying my thing? It's like, well, because it actually is the most negative card impacting me right now.
You're presenting the fastest clock to end my game right now.
Exactly.
You don't even know it.
It's like I want it off the battlefield because I want the game to slow down. My deck is designed to be paced and combat-based to go with the game. I don't want the game to speed up to a pace I can't keep up with.
Well, that's true at any speed. I mean, even if you're playing combo decks, I think if you're playing hyper-fast combo decks, people are going to get annoyed at you for just giving everybody cards because whoever finds it first is going to win.
Yeah, you're just going to combo.
They have 7 extra cards, and they can back it up, and you're just going to lose. That's pretty frustrating. But for us, we're not huge fans of this in terms of increasing your win percentage because it just doesn't. I don't know if people were out there saying it did. I think one of our controversial opinions, though, certainly is that we don't think it's good.
No, my controversial opinion is that this is one of the literal worst cards in Commander. I think that is
If you rank them all, this is like bottom 100. Even past the vanillas.
Yeah, I mean, it's worse. I think Grizzly Bears is generally going to be a better card than this. It's going to do more for you.
In terms of win percentage.
It's just, even in terms of damage. It's going to
in terms of fun. This is up there.
Well, yeah, but
not for me, actually.
Yeah, it's fun to some people. Yeah, I get that. I get Right to Flourishing as a fun card to some people.
You can even lump that in that we don't think this card's fun almost at all.
Yeah,
is our controversial opinion.
We personally don't think that, but it's also fine to have the opposite opinion on that. That's fun is 100% a subjective thing.
It certainly is. I hope you enjoyed our newest 5 most controversial opinions. Sheoldred and Varragoth stands unite. Enter in the comments respectfully, and that's cool with us. Also, you can check out our other controversial opinions where we discuss fetch lands and Grave Titan being bad, among other things.
Yes.
Which is right here.
Peace out, Tribe Scouts.